Meanwhile, across London, Sophia sat in her room, staring at the piano sheet music she had been using to teach Emma. Tears blurred the notes until they became meaningless black marks on white paper. "Miss Sophia, you haven't eaten in days," her maid Margaret said worriedly. "Please, just some broth?" "I'm not hungry, Margaret." The truth was that Sophia felt physically ill. The man she had fallen in love with, the man she had trusted with her deepest secrets in her heart, had been lying to her from the very beginning. Everything between them had been built on deception. Or had it? Late at night, when her anger cooled enough for her to think clearly, Sophia forced herself to remember every conversation with Alexander. Yes, he had hidden his true identity. Yes, he had infiltrated her life as part of a revenge scheme. But had his feelings been false? She remembered the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. Like she was something precious and unexpected. She remembered the gentleness in his touch, the raw vulnerability in his voice when he had confessed his feelings during the storm. She remembered how he treated Emma, how he spoke to servants, how he had defended Sophia against her father's cruel insinuations. Those things couldn't be faked. Could they? "Margaret," Sophia said suddenly, sitting up straighter. "What do you know about the Winters family?" The maid looked uncomfortable. "Miss, I shouldn't speak of such things." "Please, Margaret. I need to understand what happened." Margaret sighed and sat down beside her mistress. The Winters family was once very respected. Mr. Thomas Winters was a good man, honest and kind. He went into business with your father about 6 years ago. They were partners in several shipping ventures. What happened? He should have felt triumphant. Instead, he felt hollow. "Uncle Alexander?" Emma's small voice came from the doorway. She looked at him with worried eyes. "Miss Harrington didn't come today. Is she ill?" Alexander's chest tightened painfully. "No, Emma. She won't be coming back." "But why? Did I do something wrong?" Tears welled in the child's eyes. "No, sweetheart. You did nothing wrong. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes that hurt the people they care about." Emma studied his face with the uncomfortable perception of children. "You look sad, Uncle. Sadder than I've ever seen you. Even sadder than when you first came to get me after Mama died." Alexander pulled Emma into a hug, holding her tight. "I am sad. I've lost someone very important to me." "Miss Harrington?" "Yes. Do you love her?" The simple question from his innocent cousin struck straight to Alexander's heart. "Yes, Emma. I love her very much." "Then why don't you tell her?" "In my storybooks, when people love each other, they always find a way to be together. Real life is more complicated than storybooks," Alexander said gently. "Sometimes love isn't enough to fix the mistakes we've made." But Emma's words haunted him long after she left. His young cousin had asked the question Alexander had been avoiding. If he loved Sophia, why wasn't he fighting for her? The answer, he realized with growing shame, was that he had been so consumed with revenge that he had forgotten what truly mattered. Destroying Harrington had become more important than building a life with Sophia. Proving he could hurt his enemy had mattered more than protecting the woman he loved. He had become exactly like the man he hated, willing to sacrifice innocent people for his own goals. Sophia's heartbreak. "Your father deserves to be destroyed." Alexander's anger flared. "He's a criminal who has ruined countless families. He drove my father to death." "I know what my father is," Sophia said quietly, her voice heavy with pain. "But you used me. You made me trust you, love you, while lying to my face every single day." Harrington watched this exchange with malicious satisfaction. How touching. "But it hardly matters now. Sophia, you will never see this man again. And Stone or Winters or whatever you're calling yourself, I will crush you for this." "Papa, please," Sophia began, but her father grabbed her arm roughly. "You've disgraced yourself and our family. We're leaving. Now." As Harrington dragged Sophia toward the door, she looked back at Alexander one last time. In her eyes he saw not just betrayal and hurt, but something worse, disappointment. He had proven himself no better than her father, using people for his own purposes without regard for their hearts. "Sophia, please," he called after her desperately. "I love you." She paused at the doorway, her back to him. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. Love without honesty is just another form of manipulation. You taught me that tonight." Then she was gone, and Alexander stood alone in his study, surrounded by the ruins of his revenge and his heart. He had won. Harrington's empire would fall, just as he had planned. But the victory tasted like ashes, because in destroying his enemy, Alexander had lost the only person who made him want to be something more than an instrument of vengeance. He had lost Sophia. Would you like me to continue with Part 3? Love's Redemption? A 3-part 3, Love's Redemption. The bitter taste of victory. 3 days after the confrontation, Alexander stood in his study, surrounded by documents that proved Lord Harrington's guilt beyond any doubt. Bank records, forged contracts, testimonies from ruined families. Everything needed to destroy the man who had killed his father. Well, he said slowly. "It seems my daughter has been spending quite a lot of time here. Teaching music, or so she claims." His smile was cruel. "Tell me, Sophia, have you been teaching Mr. Stone anything else?" "How dare you?" Alexander stepped forward, his voice dangerous. "Your daughter is beyond reproach. She's the finest person I've ever known, which clearly proves she inherited nothing from you." The insult hung in the air. Harrington's face turned purple with rage. "You think you're clever, Stone? I'll ruin you. I'll destroy your business, your reputation, everything you've built." "You mean the way you destroyed Thomas Winters?" Alexander's voice went cold as ice. The name hung in the air like a ghost. Harrington's eyes widened with shock and recognition. "That's right," Alexander continued, his facade finally crumbling. "Thomas Winters was my father. You stole everything from him, drove him to his death with your forged documents and false testimony. And I am Alexander Winters, returned from the grave you tried to bury me in, here to destroy you just as completely as you destroyed my family." Sophia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Alexander," she whispered. "Your name is Alexander Winters?" He turned to her, seeing the betrayal blooming in her eyes, and his heart shattered. "Sophia, I can explain. You've been lying to me this entire time," she said, her voice breaking. "You never cared about me. This was all just part of your revenge against my father. I was just a tool, a way to hurt him." "No," Alexander reached for her, but she stepped back. "Sophia, what I feel for you is real. The revenge came first, but then I met you and everything changed. Everything except your lies," she said, tears streaming down her face. "You let me fall in love with you while hiding who you really were, while planning my father's destruction." "I don't care what my father thinks," Sophia said fiercely. "For once in my life, I'm choosing what I want. And I want you." The beginning of the end. For several beautiful weeks, Alexander and Sophia existed in a secret world of stolen moments and growing love. They met in the music room during Emma's lessons, in the garden during her afternoon walks, in his study when she stayed for tea. But Alexander's revenge plan continued in parallel. He was systematically dismantling Harrington's business empire, using his wealth and influence to undermine every deal, every partnership, every source of income. He told himself he could separate his love for Sophia from his hatred of her father. He was wrong. One evening, Lord Harrington arrived unexpectedly at Alexander's townhouse, his face twisted with rage. "Mr. Stone." He spat the name like a curse. "I know what you've been doing. Your business interference, your strategic investments in my competitors, your whisper campaigns among my associates. You're trying to ruin me." Alexander stood calmly, though his heart raced. "I'm simply conducting business, Lord Harrington. If your empire can't withstand legitimate competition, perhaps it wasn't as strong as you believed. Don't play games with me." Harrington's voice rose. "I've destroyed better men than you. I'll find out who you really are, what you're really after, and then—" "Papa, what are you doing here?" Sophia's voice cut through the tension. She had just arrived for Emma's evening lesson and stood frozen in the doorway, her face pale. Harrington's expression shifted to calculating coldness when he saw his daughter. His eyes moved between Sophia and Alexander, and understanding dawned in them. Ugly, poisonous understanding. Alexander's heart pounded. She saw too much, understood too much. He should deflect, change the subject, maintain his disguise. Instead, He found himself drowning in her compassionate gaze, wanting nothing more than to tell her everything. "Sophia," he whispered, reaching out to touch her cheek. "If you knew the truth about me, you would hate me." "I could never hate you," she replied softly, leaning into his touch. "Whatever secrets you carry, I see the man behind them. I see someone kind to his young cousin, someone who treats servants with respect, someone who—" She paused, her cheeks flushing. "Someone who makes my heart race when he enters a room." The confession hung between them, vulnerable and beautiful. Alexander knew he should pull away, should maintain distance for both their sakes. But the storm raged outside, and inside this warm room with firelight dancing across Sophia's face, his resolve finally shattered. "I think about you constantly," he admitted, his voice rough with emotion. "I tell myself I shouldn't, that it's impossible, that I'm deceiving you in ways you can't imagine. But every time you walk through that door, every time you smile, every time you show kindness to Emma or speak passionately about justice, I fall deeper under your spell." "Then stop fighting it," Sophia whispered, rising on her toes to bring her face closer to his. "Whatever complicated truths lie between us, whatever secrets you carry, I know my heart. And my heart says I'm falling in love with you." Alexander's control broke completely. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her with all the pent-up longing of weeks spent maintaining careful distance. Sophia melted against him, her arms winding around his neck, kissing him back with equal passion. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. Alexander rested his forehead against hers, holding her as if she might disappear if he let go. "This is madness," he murmured. "Your father would never approve." "Sometimes survival requires strategic patience, not reckless confrontation," Alexander said, thinking of his own 5-year plan for revenge. "You're doing what you can with the resources available to you. That's not cowardice, that's wisdom. The storm that changes everything." Their conversation was interrupted by a massive thunderclap. Rain began pounding against the windows with sudden fury, and Sophia jumped at the sound. "I should go," she said quickly, moving toward the door. "The storm. You can't travel in this weather," Alexander protested. "It's not safe. Please wait until it passes. I'll have Morrison prepare tea." Sophia hesitated, clearly torn between propriety and practicality. Another crash of thunder made her decision for her. "Perhaps just until the worst passes," she agreed. They moved to Alexander's private study, where a fire burned warmly in the grate. Morrison brought tea and disappeared discreetly, and suddenly Alexander and Sophia were alone in a way they had never been before. "This house is beautiful," Sophia said, looking around at the book-lined walls and comfortable furniture. "It feels like a home, not just a showplace. So many wealthy men care only about impressing visitors." "I spent years with nothing," Alexander said, the truth slipping out before he could stop it. "When you've lost everything, you learn to value comfort and warmth over ostentation." Sophia looked at him with new curiosity. "You've lost everything? But everyone says Mr. Stone has always been successful." Alexander realized he had said too much. He needed to be more careful. "I meant metaphorically," he covered quickly. "We all experience losses in life." But Sophia was perceptive. "No, you meant something more specific. I can hear it in your voice." She moved closer, her eyes searching his face. "Who are you really, Mr. Stone? Sometimes when I look at you, I sense such pain beneath the surface, such carefully hidden anger. I've discovered that my father has been cheating his business partners. He forges documents, manipulates contracts, and ruins people who trust him. I've seen the evidence in his study, letters from families begging for mercy, legal documents that don't match what he told people they were signing." Alexander's blood ran cold. This was exactly what Harrington had done to his father, but hearing confirmation from Sophia herself was both validating and heartbreaking. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked hoarsely. "Because I've been secretly trying to help his victims," Sophia confessed, tears welling in her eyes. "I take money from my teaching and send it anonymously to families he's ruined. I know it's not enough, it will never be enough, but I can't just stand by and do nothing." Alexander was stunned. Not only was Sophia aware of her father's crimes, but she was actively working against him, trying to repair the damage he caused. That's incredibly brave, he said softly. And dangerous. What would your father do if he discovered your actions? I don't know, Sophia admitted. But I can't live with myself if I don't try to make things right. My father's money is tainted with other people's suffering. I won't benefit from it without trying to return some good to the world. In that moment, Alexander's carefully constructed revenge plan began to crumble. Sophia wasn't just innocent of her father's crimes. She was actively fighting against them. She was suffering under Harrington's control just as Alexander's family had suffered. Sophia, he said, using her first name without thinking. You're remarkable. She looked up at him, tears still glistening on her cheeks. I'm not. I'm a coward. A truly brave person would confront my father directly, would expose his crimes publicly. Instead, I hide and send anonymous money, hoping it makes some small difference. I've been meaning to thank you, he began, choosing his words carefully. Emma has blossomed under your instruction. But it's more than just music. She seems happier, more confident. Sophia smiled that gentle smile that always made his chest ache. Emma is a special child. She just needed someone to believe in her abilities. Is that what you do? Believe in people? The question came out more personal than he intended. Something flickered in Sophia's eyes, a shadow of sadness. I try to. Sometimes I think believing in people's goodness is the only way to survive in a world that can be quite cruel. Has the world been cruel to you? Alexander asked softly, taking a step closer. Sophia hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. My father is not a kind man, Mr. Stone. I'm sure you've heard the rumors. He values money and power above all else, including his own daughter's happiness. The arranged marriage to Lord Blackwell, Alexander said, remembering the conversation he'd overheard at the gala. Among other things. Sophia's voice grew quieter. I teach music not just because I love it, but because it's the only independence I have. The money I earn is mine alone. My father can't touch it, can't use it for his schemes. What schemes? Alexander's pulse quickened. This was information he needed for his revenge plans. Yet hearing it from Sophia's lips felt wrong, like using her trust against her. Sophia bit her lip, clearly conflicted about saying more. I shouldn't speak ill of my father. It's not proper. Propriety is overrated, Alexander said, moving closer still. They were now just a few feet apart, and he could smell the faint lavender scent she wore. Sometimes the truth matters more than manners. The secret revealed. Sophia looked at him for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether she could trust him. Finally she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Emma's eyes lit up with understanding, and she tried the passage again. This time her playing had more confidence, more life. Alexander felt something twist in his chest. This woman, the daughter of his enemy, was nothing like what he had expected. She was patient, kind, and genuinely invested in making his young cousin happy. Uncle Alexander. Emma spotted him in the doorway. Did you hear me play? Miss Harrington says I'm improving already. You sound wonderful, Alexander said, entering the room. His eyes met Sophia's, and for a moment neither looked away. Something unspoken passed between them, a connection that made his carefully constructed walls feel suddenly fragile. Miss Harrington is clearly an excellent teacher, he added, forcing his tone to remain professional. Sophia's cheeks flushed slightly. Emma is a joy to teach. She has natural talent and, more importantly, genuine enthusiasm for learning. Secrets in the shadows. Over the following weeks, Sophia's presence became a regular part of the household. She arrived 3 afternoons each week, always punctual, always gracious. The servants adored her because she treated them with respect. Emma adored her because she made learning feel like play. And Alexander was falling in love with her, and it terrified him. He told himself it was impossible. She was Harrington's daughter, the child of the man who had destroyed his family. Loving her was a betrayal of everything he had sworn to avenge. But his heart refused to listen to logic. One rainy afternoon, Alexander found himself in the music room after Emma's lesson had ended. Sophia was gathering her sheet music, preparing to leave when he cleared his throat. Miss Harrington, might I have a word? She turned, surprised but not alarmed. Of course, Mr. Stone. The music teacher arrives. The afternoon sun streamed through the tall windows of Alexander's London townhouse as he pretended to review business documents in his study. In truth, he had read the same paragraph 5 times. His attention fixed on the sounds drifting from the music room down the hall. Sophia had arrived precisely at 2 o'clock, dressed in a modest blue dress that somehow made her brown eyes seem warmer. She had curtsied politely when Morrison, the butler, introduced her, and Alexander had forced himself to maintain the cool courtesy of an employer greeting a hired teacher. "Miss Harrington, welcome to our home," he had said, his voice carefully neutral. "Thank you, Mr. Stone. I'm honored by the opportunity to teach young Emma." Sophia's smile had been genuine, without any of the calculating charm he associated with her father. Now, an hour later, the sound of piano music filled the house. It was beautiful. A Mozart sonata played with such feeling that Alexander found himself abandoning his pretense of work and moving toward the music room. He stood in the doorway unnoticed, watching Sophia guide Emma's small hands across the keys. Her patience was remarkable. When Emma stumbled over a difficult passage, Sophia didn't scold or show frustration. Instead, she demonstrated the technique again, her fingers dancing across the keys with effortless grace. "You see, Emma? Music isn't about perfection. It's about feeling. Let the notes tell a story." "What story does this piece tell?" Emma asked, her face scrunched in concentration. Sophia thought for a moment. "To me, it sounds like a summer morning. The quick notes are like birds singing, and the slower parts are like gentle breezes. But you might hear something different, and that's perfectly wonderful. Music speaks differently to each person." "Her name is Miss Sophia Harrington," Emma continued innocently. "Lady Pemberton says she's the finest music teacher in all of London, even though her father doesn't approve of her teaching. Isn't that exciting?" Alexander's head snapped up. "What did you say her name was?" "Miss Sophia Harrington. Do you know her, uncle?" "Know her?" Alexander's mind raced. Sophia would be coming to his house regularly, teaching Emma. She would be in his home under his roof. The daughter of his enemy, the woman he couldn't stop thinking about, would be constantly near him. This was either a disaster or an opportunity. Alexander wasn't sure which. "When does she begin?" he asked carefully. "Tomorrow afternoon." "Oh, Uncle Alexander, I'm so excited. They say she plays piano like an angel." That night, Alexander stood in his study long after Emma had gone to bed. Tomorrow Sophia Harrington would walk through his door. She would smile at him with those kind eyes, never knowing that he was the son of the man her father had destroyed, never suspecting that he was planning her father's complete ruin. The right thing, the honorable thing, would be to send her away, to refuse her services and keep her far from the web of revenge he was weaving. But Alexander Winters had stopped caring about honor the day he watched his father die of a broken heart. He had spent 5 years planning this revenge. He wouldn't let anything stop him now. Not even the strange ache in his chest when he thought of Sophia's gentle smile. Not even the whisper of doubt that suggested revenge might cost him more than he was willing to pay. Tomorrow Sophia Harrington would enter his home, and Alexander would continue his plan, no matter how complicated his feelings might become. The game of vengeance was about to get far more personal than he had ever imagined. "Why would I think badly of kindness?" Alexander asked, moving closer. The moonlight made her seem almost ethereal. "Most people in London society think charity is something you do publicly for show," Sophia said quietly. "Real kindness, the kind that costs you something personal, is considered foolish." "Then perhaps London society needs to learn better values," Alexander replied. Sophia smiled and it transformed her entire face. "I think I like you, Mr. Stone. You seem different from most of my father's associates." If only she knew how different, Alexander thought with bitter irony. He was the son of the man her father had destroyed. Yet standing here with her, feeling the warmth of her smile, his carefully constructed plans suddenly felt more complicated. The seeds of conflict. Over the following days, Alexander couldn't stop thinking about Sophia Harrington. He told himself it was strategic. Understanding his enemy's daughter might provide useful leverage. But truthfully, something about her haunted him. His plan was progressing perfectly. Through his identity as Mr. Stone, he had begun investing in businesses that competed with Harrington's interests. He had started spreading carefully worded doubts about Harrington's business practices among influential people. Slowly, methodically, he was building the foundation to destroy Lord Harrington's empire, just as Harrington had destroyed his father's. But then fate intervened in an unexpected way. Uncle Alexander. His young cousin Emma burst into his study, waving a letter excitedly. At 10 years old, Emma was the daughter of his mother's sister, now in his guardianship. I'm to have a new music teacher. Lady Pemberton recommended her specifically. Alexander barely looked up from his papers. That's wonderful, Emma. I'm sure she'll be excellent. My daughter, Sophia. Sophia, this is Mr. Stone, a very successful merchant. Harrington practically pushed his daughter forward. Sophia curtsied gracefully, though her cheeks flushed with embarrassment at her father's obvious manipulation. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Stone. The pleasure is entirely mine, Alexander said, and he was surprised to realize he meant it. Up close, Sophia had kind eyes and a gentle demeanor that seemed completely unlike her ruthless father. A glimpse of kindness. Later that evening, Alexander observed Sophia from across the room. While her father schemed and networked, she had slipped away to the terrace. Alexander followed, intending merely to learn more about his enemy's daughter. What he found surprised him. Sophia was speaking with an elderly flower vendor, who had somehow ended up at the servants' entrance. The woman looked exhausted and worried. Please, miss, I just need to earn enough for my grandson's medicine, the vendor was saying. They were supposed to let me sell flowers at the event, but now they're turning me away. Without hesitation, Sophia opened her small purse and placed several coins in the woman's hand. This should help. Please take care of your grandson. But miss, this is far too much. Consider it payment for the beautiful roses you've grown, Sophia insisted gently. They bring joy to so many people. That's worth more than money can measure. The vendor left with tears of gratitude, and Alexander found himself staring at Sophia with new eyes. This wasn't the behavior of a spoiled aristocrat's daughter. This was genuine compassion. That was kind of you, he said, stepping from the shadows. Sophia jumped slightly, then relaxed when she saw it was Mr. Stone. Oh, you startled me. She looked embarrassed. I hope you don't think badly of me for giving away money. My father would be furious if he knew. Alexander had been left with nothing but his name, a name now associated with scandal and disgrace. So he had left London, changed his identity, and built a new fortune through sheer determination and brilliant business sense. Now he was back, wealthy and powerful as Mr. Stone, ready to destroy the man who had destroyed his family. The unexpected encounter. Papa, please slow down. A soft voice cut through Alexander's dark thoughts. You're hurting my arm. Alexander turned to see Lord Harrington himself, older but still radiating arrogance, gripping a young woman's arm as he pulled her through the crowd. The woman was perhaps 23 or 24, with chestnut hair and gentle brown eyes that seemed troubled. Don't embarrass me tonight, Sophia, Harrington hissed at her. Lord Blackwell is watching, and I expect you to be charming when I introduce you. So this was Sophia Harrington, the daughter Alexander had heard about but never seen. She had been just a child when he left London. Now she was a grown woman, and something about the sadness in her eyes made Alexander's heart constrict unexpectedly. But Papa, I don't wish to marry Lord Blackwell, Sophia protested quietly. He's nearly 50 years old, and everyone says he's cruel to his servants. Harrington's face darkened with anger. You'll do as I command. This marriage will secure valuable business connections. Your wishes are irrelevant. Before Alexander could stop himself, he stepped forward. Lord Harrington, what a surprise to see you here. Harrington turned, his expression shifting to false warmth when he saw the wealthy Mr. Stone. Ah, Mr. Stone. I've been hoping to make your acquaintance. Your business success has been quite remarkable. Indeed, Alexander replied coolly, his eyes moving to Sophia, who was watching him with quiet curiosity. And who is this lovely young lady? The ghost returns to London. Alexander Winters stood at the edge of the ballroom, watching the glittering crowd with eyes as cold as winter frost. 5 years had passed since he last set foot in London society. 5 years since his world had burned to ashes. The crystal chandeliers sparkled above heads adorned with jewels and feathers. Women in silk gowns laughed behind painted fans while men in fine coats discussed business and politics. To everyone here, this was just another glamorous evening. But for Alexander, this was the beginning of his carefully planned revenge. "Mr. Stone, how wonderful that you could attend," Lady Pemberton gushed, approaching with her usual enthusiasm. She had no idea that Mr. Stone, the mysterious wealthy merchant from the north, was actually Alexander Winters, the son of the family her friends had helped destroy. "The pleasure is mine, Lady Pemberton," Alexander replied smoothly, his voice betraying none of the anger burning in his chest. He had perfected this mask over 5 long years. The memory that burns. As servants passed with trays of champagne, Alexander's mind drifted back to that terrible night. He could still see his father's face, pale and defeated, holding the letter that announced their complete ruin. Lord Edmund Harrington, his father's trusted business partner, had stolen everything through forged documents and false testimony. "Father, we can fight this," young Alexander had pleaded, just 20 years old and desperate. But his father had simply shaken his head. "It's over, son. Harrington has powerful friends. We have nothing left." 3 days later, his father was dead. The doctor called it a heart condition, but Alexander knew the truth. His father had died of a broken heart and crushed spirit. His mother followed 6 months later, unable to bear the shame and poverty.